Hi, and welcome to this month's Designed for Organization. Beth Howard with Better Rooms for You will be joining me shortly. And Beth and I go on once a month and we talk about organization, and each month we focus on a new part of the home. I am Tia Hunsperger with Closet Factory Colorado, and Beth will be on here in a minute to join me. So Beth and I today, we welcome Beth. How are you?
Hi, doing well. How are you today?
I am doing great. So we're going to be talking today about what I've been calling the new home office, right? So
Right.
for so many of us, the home office has changed quite a bit over this last year. And we're going to talk all about it, but lots of changes and lots of adjustments we've all had to make with many more people working from home instead of leaving or working on the road. Um, and this actually is really funny. So this is one of the things that's been happening in my home office. My kitty jumps up on my table every once in a while. So Jack the cat, he may join us today. He's really been very wanting to visit me this morning, and I thought how appropriate that was. Like, you can't cue a cat. I didn't tell him to do that, right? So, but it happens in our work lives right now. So Beth, let's get started. Let's talk about how home offices have changed. And I don't know about you, but a year ago, my home office was a little table and a comfy chair kind of off to the side of my living room. And very quickly in March, I learned that it was too noisy to do virtual meetings there. All of a sudden, I was having to do lots of virtual meetings. The sound was bad. It was not working. What about you? Have you had to change kind of to a new office location in your home?
Well, funny story. With my kids coming and going, I have three adult daughters, and whether they're home or visiting, and or temporarily move back, I have a desk that has migrated around to almost every room in my house except the laundry room and the bathrooms. So I have a permanent space right now, and like you said, when you kind of before Zoom, you didn't have to worry about what was behind you. You could have your bedroom or whatever, and now you got to be really careful. So, but yeah, I'm hopefully going to be here for at least a couple months in a row.
Yes, the background, and we'll talk more about that, but the background has become important. I've actually designed a couple specific offices for people focused on backgrounds, right? Because now the background matters. And not only does what the background look like matter, you want it to look like it relates or at least doesn't contradict with the subject matter that we're talking about. But you also don't want, I mean, when Jack the cat jumps in, that's a little cute, but you don't want like your children or your husband like running around in their underwear or racing off ready for work, right? Which
Right.
happen in many houses. So that the whole background and where we sit has definitely become a big part of our office decisions that we're making. I have had an amazing year at Closet Factory Colorado, really getting to design some great offices. I actually had an installation of an office on New Year's Eve, and I talked to the client yesterday, and she's in a situation where she kind of like you, she actually has a high school and a college age daughter, and they're home sometimes and not some home sometimes working. So she wanted an office that was designed in a way that when they're there, all three of them can work in the same space. But when it's her alone, she doesn't feel like she's working in a room that is missing people, right? So we
Right.
designed this nice big peninsula that comes out from the wall, and she can sit on one side and have a beautiful view out the window. And when the girls are there, they can kind of come up to the end and the other side of the island and join her. And so we designed it a few months back, and it finally got installed, and she's loving the new space.
Good.
So moving kids into offices has definitely been one of the changes that a lot of people have had to make. Any suggestions or tips when, and I guess moving kids into an office, but also maybe moving, two spouses that, I typically am on the road a lot. Now my job has moved more virtual, where I'm doing more appointments with, this pretty wall behind me versus at people's homes. And so any suggestions as we're having to transition space and create a space for that was for one person for multiple people to fit into?
Well, I think that there needs to be some ground rules for two adults working together. If one's on a phone call, the other one needs to remain quiet if they can work together, or create a schedule, some kind of, way that each of them can do their job efficiently. Bringing in children, that does bring in a whole nother dynamic. And when you do that, make sure that, especially if they're small children, that you have appropriately sized furniture. I helped a gal kind of transition her basement from just kind of like a playroom to a not only an area that the family could come and enjoy during non-school hours, but go down there and the adult could do some work while the kids were at their tables.
Right.
And so you just kind of have to see what the purposes are, what the needs are, and then come up with some type of compromise for the room.
For sure, for sure. And I know for some people, I think everyone hopes that homeschool is a temporary solution to what's going on in the world right now. But I know a lot of people that have worked in offices, businesses are just transferring and transitioning to people working from home either all the time or much more of the time. So some of these solutions are temporary, and I think some of them are going to be a more permanent option long term.
Right.
So, Beth, let's talk about spaces that we use for offices. You've mentioned you've kind of used every room in your house for an office. Some people have the luxury of having a room that they get to designate as an office space. Sometimes the office is the dining room table or some other space. I know for me a lot, I am designing a space with an office in it, but also it's a guest bedroom. So we design a Murphy bed, or what we call a wall bed space, where most of the time that space can be a guest room, but it can also transition back and forth between an office and a guest room when it's needed. But the bed isn't taking up the space all of the time. Any thoughts on multi-purpose rooms?
Well, I don't know if you noticed my volume went down and I had to go to my headphones.
Oh,
So, but with the, combining like the guest room, I personally am in a guest bedroom office situation.
okay.
And with the Murphy beds, that's so awesome that you can easily transfer it from a home office to that area for guests. So I'm sorry, I was struggling and I'm like, I need my headphones.
Right. I think Murphy beds are a great option. And a lot of times, it's important to have a dedicated space, especially if it's, your parents and their elderly coming. You want a very comfortable space for them to stay when they come. But a lot of us don't have the ability to have an extra bedroom in our house that is just for guests that come maybe a few weeks a year, right? But it's important when they do come. So the beauty of the wall bed option, Murphy bed is one of the brands that we offer at Closet Factory Colorado. The bed folds down into the room when you need it, and it's up and out of the way, and we can build just the bed, or we can build it into a surrounding area with some beautiful shelves and cabinetry and desk area, and really make it a very usable and multi-purpose but workable space, which is a great option. So, Beth, let's say we have a blank slate for a room. What are your thoughts on laying out an office?
Well, I think one of the most important things is lighting. Either if you want to have some natural light coming in, or if you have overhead light. If you have a light on your desk, it can take up a little bit more room. So if you had, some lighting that is like if you're designing a office underneath the shelving area or something like that. But I have my light right here that I know my desk needs to be placed under it. So there's some things you can change with lighting and some things you have to work with. And so for me, I like to have not much decoration on my desk, and things within easy reach. Valuable real estate is right around your fingertips. So you want to be able to reach those pens, notes, things like that quickly so you're not jumping up and down and grabbing it. A filing cabinet close by, but most importantly, a good free and clear working space as much as possible for your computer and some white space on your dominant side of your body so you can do all those functions that you need to do.
For sure, for sure. I think lighting, that's another thing that's kind of changed for us, right? Like old school lighting, we just needed to be able to see what was on our desk and what was on our table. Now we need to think about the lighting when we're in a virtual meeting. And you talked about overhead lighting. That's great for our desktop space being workable, but sometimes it creates some very non-flattering shadows in our face.
Right.
And so I actually, when I sit in this office, sometimes I turn the ceiling light off and I have some lighting because I do these meetings so much. But I just turn the lighting on, and sometimes I open the window blinds and sometimes I don't. It kind of just depends on the time of the day and that. But lighting is definitely something that has transitioned over this year. As far as layouts of offices, one of the things that I love as a designer is I get to lay out an office in whatever way a client wants, right? If they want to see the beautiful view out their window, whether that's the front or the back of the house, whether they want to see through the French doors that their dog and their kids are like putting their faces up out on the other side, right? So they
Or
can,
not. Maybe they
right,
don't want to see that.
right? But know if there's an emergency and they have to go, or if it's a kid just wanting to bug their mom or whatever, right?
Right.
So the beauty of that is, as I'm designing a space at Closet Factory, we can really design it exactly the way a client needs, which is, it's not, I don't know if you've ever, like, you go furniture shopping and you're like measuring out a piece of furniture and you're like, oh, this is a few inches too big or a few inches too small or whatever. And the beauty of that is we can really cut and build a space custom exactly to someone's kind of measurements of their space. So Beth, let's talk about, I know a lot of people are using unusual spaces in their homes for office. I've seen some pictures of people that have actually turned little closets where they open the door and it's this beautiful office inside. They go in, they work, they leave the door open, so they have some air and light, but it's a great space. I just recently designed a space these clients had. It's like the stairs come down and you pass through like into the living room one direction or into the kitchen the other, and there was kind of this open cubby off to the side, and I don't know what you would actually use that space for. Like, I don't know when the architect designed that house. I don't know what that space was meant to be, but they had the idea. They came and met me at the showroom. I met them, and then I got to go out to their house and design a space. But we took this little corner. The husband of this couple is starting a new business and he needs some dedicated workspace. And so we did a desk with some lower cabinetries for their printer. And it's going to be a nice, really sleek way to use this corner that's kind of unusable space in the house. And so any other thoughts you have on kind of unique spaces that we can use for our new home offices?
Well, like I said, I even contemplated the laundry room and that didn't work. But when you do have those small spaces, you need to downsize. Just like if you're downsizing to a smaller home, you need to find those essential elements that you absolutely have to have and have them be ready for you to use. And then maybe find a little bit of storage somewhere else for like the overflow or things you don't use on a daily basis. But working inside, as long as you have that flat surface and what you need, you can have an office just about anywhere.
For sure, for sure. And it's you talk about downsizing. So many of us are in different situations. I'm in the midst of a project designing a home office for a woman, and she's got plenty of room. She's a single woman with two dogs, and so she's got extra bedroom in the house that's her office. But we're actually designing a space that was very specifically sized and placed for her work because she works in IT and needed to have a number of different monitors on her desk. So lots of room for these very large monitors to sit. And then we kind of mirrored the other side of the room, changed the dimensions a little bit, but a mirror image of that same desk on the other side of the room where she can use that space for her personal office. So she pays bills there, she does crafts there, you know, art and that sort of thing. So she's got these, she can kind of roll her chair back and forth around the room depending on, I won't say what mood, because when it's work time, right? But depending on
Right.
what your project is, kind of moving back and forth between the two spaces. She's lucky to have that space. We don't all get
Right.
that. But I love the fact that she knew that this was something that was going to benefit her, was to have these two separate working spaces, and then we could design a space. And I'm sure, Beth, you talk about having everything in hand. Like she's going to need like a cup with pens on both desks, and some of those things repeated, right? So everything is in kind of arm's reach for her.
I agree. Even when some people who might have ADHD, they say to have like cleaning items where you need them so it's not in one central location. So the same thing with like desks. If you, like you said, if you need, pens and pencils and paper or whatever, or if the task is different, like if you're working on something that doesn't need your business office supplies, then you obviously don't need to store them over there, but you might need basic office supplies.
For sure, for sure. For me, I often will be sketching something out and need a ruler in my workspace. In my personal space, maybe sometimes I want a ruler, but I don't need a second ruler in my personal
Right,
office space because I'm using it all the time. So that's a
right.
great example of that. So Beth, let's talk about, as we transition into these new offices, it may be a limited space. Let's talk about finding more storage space in kind of an existing space. I know when we talked the other day, you talked about kind of going up and down and back and underneath. So what are some of your suggestions to kind of find more space in a room that already maybe feels kind of full?
Right. So one of the best things to do is to go vertical because you only have so much surface space. The wall in front of you or beside you or wherever that wall happens to be, you can use a pegboard system and have cups that hang in there, especially for children. That's really good to put their crayons and markers and all their office supplies. I know that you have a rail system that you can pretty much do the same thing with hooks and buckets and bins and things like that. And then also working vertically with your filing system. I have a file system on my desk, and each level has a specific reason, and one of them's personal. It's like my personal stuff. I don't want to get that mixed in. And I do have a tip about that. When you have those the files shelves that go like this,
Yes.
you take your file folder and turn it upside down and write what the
Oh,
file. And so when you put it on the shelf, it's a tab that sticks out and you can read quickly that it's current projects. And so that's one of my tips for kind of helping keep those bins or those tiers organized. You mentioned maximizing your storage with a filing cabinet that I say try to use as broad a category as you can so your timing of filing is a lot quicker.
yes.
And then another thing that I like is a bin that's for like holding pattern. If you get a piece of paper and you don't want to file it because it's not that important, you may not need it for another week or two, you put it in there, it sits, and then everything piles on top of it, and by the time it's time to get rid of it, you probably don't need that piece of paper. So it's like a holding bin, and it's really easy just to toss stuff in there. But yeah, I like the vertical, and because you only have so much surface space.
Yeah, for sure. So you talk about the rail systems. We offer both what's called an omni track, which is like a rail, and we offer like a slat wall version. And actually, in our showroom at Closet Factory, Colorado, we have a craft area that has the slat wall and the omni track as part of the option for kind of the backsplash to the desk. And
Hmm.
with that, then, there's lots of options of different containers and tools and things that you can attach to that wall. And the great thing about that is it's adjustable, right? So let's say you're mostly working yourself, but I have a friend who a couple days a week, when she works on the weekends, she doesn't have daycare for her daughter. So then on those days, her daughter has to sit next to her at the desk while she's working, and the daughter's working, and the daughter's coloring or whatever it might be. So maybe she doesn't want the crayon containers out all week, but she could pop those in a drawer and then pop those back up when her daughter is kind of sharing the desk space with her.
And that's one great point, is containerizing things for organization. Like if you have a lap drawer, having some small dividers in there to divide out all the different elements that you do need, and just have everything in its place. Just like organizing a home, you want to know where to get your stapler or whatever, stamps, whatever you may need. Stamps, who uses stamps anymore? But whatever.
I did buy stamps to send out holiday cards. So
There you go.
so let's talk about dividers and drawers. That's a great point. Oftentimes we think of like we need like a pencil holder, and we go out and we search the stores and we find these containers. At Closet Factory Colorado, I can actually design a drawer, whatever size it needs to be. And then we have these really cool things called binning strips. And it's a strip that goes along the front and the back of the drawer, and it has slots in it. And then there's dividers that are cut for the size of the drawer, and you can adjust them. So you can put as many or as few as you want. And the beauty of it is, if your needs change in the future, you're not ditching the divider system that you bought. You just move them around. So if you get let's say you have a planner that goes in there, and next year you get a planner that's a couple inches bigger, well, then it doesn't fit anymore, right? So I'd rather just buy the planner I like and adjust the divider over a bit to fit in that space. So
I think that's awesome that you're not locked into one thing. And when you start organizing and you start organizing your desk, you may think, oh, this fits great here. But then if you change your mind, you say, I don't need it there, but I want this here. That interchangeable divider system is golden, because you're always going to get what you need.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes. I'll share a little bit of a personal story of mine, Beth. I can be a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my own organization. And I love it when I get to go in and I meet with a client and they're like, I need this, this, and this, which is great because I can design exactly to what they need. When it's my own space, I overthink well, maybe in the future I need something different, part of it, right? And then I get a little caught up with what the best solution. So what I love about what we do, and I always tell my clients about this, like even in a closet, like rods and shelves are adjustable. So I can design it as I need it now, but I'm not 100% forever committed to that solution. I have the ability to like change my mind in the future, which will happen, and then adjust with the new space.
Because when everything changes, everything
Here's
at some point.
Example of that.
It's awesome.
So I wanted to talk about one other thing about finding space. When I'm designing a space, I can go literally all the way up to someone's ceiling. Now, the ceiling is not a very easy to get to space, but it can be a usable space for either some attractive bins to go up on a top shelf, or I can do cabinets with doors, so it doesn't matter what it looks like inside. But the beauty of that is that can be a place to put like the last 7 years of tax returns and paperwork that we need to keep. We need it stored somewhere. An office is a logical place for it to be. A lot of people, I think, keep that stuff like in their filing drawers, but you don't need to access that all the time. You maybe never need it, right? So putting it in there and then putting it up on a top shelf is a great way to utilize that space, but get it out of the space that we're using.
Right. That's outside of that valuable real estate. It's real estate up there, and it's good real estate. It's just you don't have to access it very much. So those Christmas cards, once you're done, bam, they go back up in there until next year. Or if you have, a lot of sticky notes and you don't need that many, you don't need 5, 6, 8 packs at a time, they can go up high.
Yeah.
And then you would containerize your office supplies, your overflow office supplies on a shelf or a cabinet or something like that when you're putting them away.
For sure. Another space that I love that kind of helps my clients find some I like to call it secret storage. So when I'm designing a desk, obviously something has to hold up the end of a desk, right? Like a desk doesn't just float in space. And oftentimes when I'm putting a desk up against a wall or in a corner, I will do a nice kind of simple, shallow set of shelves underneath there. I have to have
Mm,
something to go down there, but I can make it a little bit more involved. It's not in the way of like your leg space under the desk, but it's a great place to store like the office supplies. You buy like a case of printer paper, but it's going to take you months to get through that. So it's a great place to stack some of those things that you're not getting to every day, but when you do need them, you can jump down there and grab those. Or like if you do like project work and you have, product information. I used to work in an office where I had this notebook that I needed like once a month, right? I didn't need to get to it very often, but every once in a while I need to pull it out and look up some product information. And so that's a great place to store some of those things that we occasionally need to get to, but not so often.
yeah,
Let's
very good.
talk about visible versus non-visible storage in the office. And this is something that I love because all of my clients are different and everybody has a different solution. For example, and this happens in closets too. When I go into a closet, me personally, I like to see all my items, even if they look a little messy. I like to see it so I don't forget what's there. Some people want everything behind a door so they can't see it. I feel that the same way kind of about pantries. What's your thought
Hmm.
about enclosed storage with doors versus open bookshelves, or frosted glass versus clear glass in some doors so we can see or not see what items we're storing?
Right. I think there's several things at play is how you process information and your retention of that information. If you have a hard time remembering where you put something, then you might want that open shelving or the clear glass so you can see in and make your life a lot easier than hunting and frantically and then maybe going out to buy more sticky notes that you forgot that were way up high, and so I think that's, one of the most powerful things in designing a space or an organizing system is to reach out and find out exactly what that customer needs and then give it to them. And then also there's the aesthetic. Um, I like to have pretty around me, but not necessarily on my desk
Okay.
because when you're working in there the whole time, you want to make it a comfortable location. You don't want it to be, kind of stale and really blah. I mean, so it really depends on how much you like to see kind of pretty inspirational stuff and how much you need to actually see stuff. So there's a couple things at play.
Right. And that's what I love about what I get to do, right? Is a part of my process when I'm interviewing a new client and learning about their needs, I ask those questions. And sometimes it's like when I walk a new construction model home and they have that beautiful glass door on the pantry that says pantry, but you can see through the glass door. I would never want to see what my pantry looks like because it's not perfect every day, right? I know we talked about perfect pantries a couple months ago. If you guys haven't seen that, you can go to YouTube and watch our video on perfect pantries. But mine doesn't look perfect every day, right? So I wouldn't want the clear glass door. But some people want that, right? And so that's what I love about designing custom spaces is I get to make it exactly the right way. And whether that's what it looks like aesthetically, the way it functions, there's so
Hmm.
many options. And as you talked about, like you mentioned earlier in a conversation about like somebody with ADD wanting, the cleaning product right there, like we all have different, whether it's, some type of a programming that we had, like we worked in an office and a boss told us to do it one way, so we're always going to do it that way. Or like, our dad always said you have to have the pens on the left, not on the right, whatever that is, right?
Right.
Find that space for whatever works for us. And that's what I love about what I get to do. So, Beth, before we wrap up today, I want you to share your steps for organization. I think right now, as we're moving new people in our office and we're maybe having to clean some space out, and this comes in handy because it's it's January, it's the beginning of the year. I think a lot of us have some New Year's resolutions, some goals for the year that might include some organizing. Run through your steps for organizing a space.
Right. My steps start with the acronym SPACE. The first thing you need to do is sort your items. So you dump out that lap drawer and you put your things into categories. Then you purge items. You figure out what doesn't need to live in that valuable space, or what you don't need anymore, or what doesn't work for you anymore. And one of the things one of my tips is use pins that have clickers instead of caps, so you don't lose the caps and have to sort that later. Then you assign a location. Like it's going to be in the desk drawer, it's going to be in an upper cupboard or something like that. You contain it with your awesome divider system, or a bin or a box up high, wherever it's going to be, or folders. And then you evaluate, and that goes back to that desk drawer. I love that desk drawer because you can say, well, you know what, it does or it doesn't fit here, it's working or it's not working. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of how you approach any organization, whether it's the garage or your desk or the kitchen. So
For sure. I love those steps, and I love the acronym because that's easy to remember and really
right.
what we're thinking about. So I love that. Well, Beth, I think it's time for us to wrap up today. It's gone so quick. I swear,
I know.
we could talk for days about.
I do have one tip. I do have one tip. Instead of having tons of sticky notes around, I got a dot book. It's just the dots that you can write in, and you start with a page of table of contents,
Okay.
and you number your own pages as you go, and so you don't have tons of sticky notes all over the place. It's in one location. It has its home on your desk, and that way you just reach for that instead of, where is that piece of paper? I don't know where it is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Beth, that's a great tip. That's a great tip for offices, but just in life in general, kind of keeping everything, in one centralized.
Tame the paper.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, Beth, it's been great to talk about new offices and how they're working in our crazy homes. Hopefully in 2021, we're going to get back to people. And like I said earlier, I think some people are going to continue to work from home. And if you need a new office space, that your space isn't working, I'm happy to come in and talk about. And I'll say this, sometimes it's a whole new office, and sometimes it's just a cabinet. I was out to measure a house yesterday, and a client ordered this very beautiful, aesthetically beautiful, very contemporary looking desk. He didn't need me to help with the desk, but he needed a really beautiful storage with some bookshelves, and we've got an opening for artwork to go in, and then some lower cabinets. That's what he needed. I want to mention one other thing about offices that we forgot to talk about, Beth, is the printer. Where do you like to put your printer?
Away. I don't like to see my printer. It does not bring me joy.
I am with you. So when I design a space, I like to do, whether at a lower or an upper cabinet, oftentimes it's a lower cabinet with a rollout shelf on it. So you can put the printer in there, open the door, pull it out, do what you need to do, change the ink, get to the back of it, plug in a new cord, whatever that is. And then you push it in and close it up, and it's gone, and not, maybe making your office look a little more
clunky,
cluttered.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's my is I'll build you a shelf in your cabinet that will slide out that printer.
Very good. Very good.
So Beth, next month we're going to be back, and our plan is to talk about mudrooms.
Nice.
At such a transitional space for, especially, it'll be February, we'll still be in winter, but as we start to think about the spring and our shoe and our coat and our bag and all the needs that come and go into the house start to change. I love a good mudroom. And we all don't have space for a full-on mudroom, but we'll talk about some ways that we can create some organization that works in that same type of way. So we'll be back. For those of you who you don't know our schedule, Beth and I are on once a month. It's the first Wednesday of the month at 12 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, because we live in the greater Denver area. If you want to reach out to me, I'm Tia with Closet Factory Colorado, and her company's name is Better Rooms for You. And we will see you back here next month.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.